pushing for a ceasefire. The U.S. is pressuring Israel to hold off on its invasion of Rafah and make a deal for the return of hostages held in Gaza.
Meanwhile, the International Criminal Court reportedly is preparing arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and other high-level Israeli leaders on alleged war crimes. CBN's Dale Hurd reports.
President Biden has again told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the White House opposes Israel's planned invasion of the Gazan city of Rafah. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia for the first leg of a Mideast tour to lobby for a ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages in Gaza.
That's going to be right at the top of the list for Secretary Blinken, to keep pushing for this temporary ceasefire. We want it to last for about 6 weeks. It would allow for all those hostages to get out and, of course, to allow for easier aid access to places in Gaza, particularly up in the north.
The website Axios reports the Israeli government has proposed a possible hostage deal with Hamas that includes discussing an end to fighting in exchange for the hostages. Hamas reportedly has no objections to the deal and is sending a delegation to Cairo. While ending the war has been a key Hamas demand, right-wing party members of Israel's governing coalition have threatened to leave if it agrees to what they call a reckless deal. Today, Hamas took credit for launching about 20 rockets from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. The IDF says they were all intercepted. Thousands demonstrated in Tel Aviv Saturday demanding the release of the hostages and the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government after a Hamas propaganda video showed 2 Israeli hostages in captivity, 47-year-old Israeli Omri Miran and Israeli-American Keith Siegel, who said, "I want to tell my family that I love you very much." He then begins to weep during his message. In response, Siegel's family released a video with his wife, herself a former hostage who was released in November, saying, "Keith, I love you. We will fight until you return." 133 hostages remain in captivity after more than 200 days since the Hamas attack.
This is job number 1 of the government of Israel. Job number 1, and they failed dramatically. They should go. All the governments, all the 64 members.
Meanwhile, violent pro-Palestinian protests continue on college campuses across the U.S. Fighting broke out on the UCLA campus amid dueling demonstrations between pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protesters. UCLA officials say a barrier between the groups was breached, leading to brawls between the two sides.
We would like very much for them to understand and to learn about the history of Israel. I believe that many of these young people have no idea. They just come because they follow someone, but they don't know what is going on.
On the diplomatic front, Israeli media reports the U.S. is trying to prevent the International Criminal Court from issuing arrest warrants against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials for alleged war crimes. Netanyahu posted on X, "Under my leadership, Israel will never accept any attempt by the ICC to undermine its inherent right of self-defense." Unidentified Israeli officials said the charges against Israel's leaders would be for allegedly preventing the delivery of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip and their military's aggressive response to the October 7th Hamas terror attack. They believe the court is also considering arrest warrants against leaders of Hamas. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Any country in the world would have an aggressive response to the October 7th attack. Can you imagine it here in the United States if Canada or Mexico, their ruling government, unleashed terrorists who then killed children, raped women, took hostages? What would our response be? It would be overwhelming, and that is what Israel has every right to do. It has every right to defend itself. And if you think Hamas is just going to, okay, we now recognize that we need peace and we're going to live peacefully with Israel, think again. They have vowed to repeat October 7 again and again and again. Israel has to absolutely destroy it. So all the pressure shouldn't be put on Israel. All the pressure should be put on Hamas. And Hamas needs to unconditionally surrender, release all the hostages, lay down all their arms. If that happens, there will be absolute peace in Gaza, and there will be a huge flow of humanitarian aid. For the ICC to say, well, Israel has tried to block humanitarian aid, we're trying to build a pier right now. This is our government, the U.S. government, trying to build a pier so that food supplies can go to Gaza. Who started firing mortars at the construction crew? Hamas did. So if you want to charge somebody, charge the members of Hamas, charge Qatar for supporting them with hundreds of millions of dollars, charge the leadership of Iran with fomenting terror, not just on the southern border, but on the northern border to Hezbollah. Let us, identify the real villains here. It's the ideology that says from the river to the sea. That ideology is calling for genocide, killing all the Jews, completely wiping Israel off the map. They're the ones who are violating international law. Israel isn't.